One. Good evening, Michigan. Hope you all are enjoying your Sunday today. Glad to see everybody back here again. Today we have a special episode. My chairman for the state of Michigan U.S. Taxpayers Party is joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to finally be able to have him on the show. We're going to go over the building blocks of our foundation for our nation and what our forefathers had set in place and the things that we might be able to do to turn the ship around, so to speak, and get back to our original inception. Welcome back, everybody. Once again, it's a pleasure to have our state chairman for the U.S. Taxpayers Party of Michigan, uh, national affiliate, being the Constitution Party, here with us tonight. Um, this gentleman, for me, has been a great help to me since I came to the U.S. Taxpayers of Michigan Party um, just a few short months ago. And he's been here the whole time, anytime that I've had a question or needed help with something and anything that I was doing. He's a very moral and stand up gentleman, and we're pleased to have him here with us tonight. And I'm going to let Bill give you some more information about who he is and a little bit of his background. Bill?
Okay, well, thank you, Ethan, for having me on tonight. I am the chairman for the State Central Committee of the U.S. Taxpayers Party of Michigan. Have been for 8 of the last 10 years, I guess, and recently re-elected at our most recent convention. And I appreciate that. I don't take that responsibility lightly. This is serious business, although we do get to have some fun with it from time to time. I ran for vice president in 2020. Maybe some of your listeners saw my name on the ballot. Hopefully some of them voted for us. I ran with Don Blankenship, our presidential candidate, a man who I have learned to appreciate, and I am privileged to be a friend of and hold a friendship with Don Blankenship. He's a good man and decided that he wanted to run with me for president, me as his vice presidential candidate. And I'm very grateful and very humbled by that. I am also the Midwestern States co-chair. We have 2 leaders in the Midwestern states of the Constitution Party, which is our national affiliate. John Blazek from Missouri is our Midwestern States chair. I am the Midwestern States co-chair. So it is our purpose and our job, our duty to not only build parties in the states that currently do not have parties, and there are a couple in the Midwest, but we work very hard at building up the existing parties, working with them to strengthen them, structure them, develop policies and programs, and lead them through their ballot choices each election. It's a very trying job. As a matter of fact, just about an hour ago, I I got back in town, I was asked to speak to the Missouri Constitution Party. They had an event for their state leadership, and that was held on some ranch out in the middle of nowhere in the middle of Missouri. It was a beautiful trip. We had a great time. Had a great meeting, and we stayed there yet last night and then hit the road this morning. I just got back in. So that's me in a nutshell. You probably said it before, Ethan, but the U.S. Taxpayers Party is the Michigan affiliate of the National Constitution Party. And there's a long reason as to why our names are different. And I don't know if you want to cover that tonight. We can if you'd like, but that is all on the website. Or if you have any questions, call our phone number, which is also listed on the website, and we can explain that to you. So, have I missed anything, Ethan?
No, I think that just about covers it. We'll definitely touch on that a little bit tonight as far as why our name here in Michigan is different from the national affiliation. There's also a video on my Facebook page that's been shared that is starring Bill here and Bill Mohr II, Bill's son, that goes in depth a little more into the explanation of why here in Michigan it's known as the U.S. Taxpayers Party still instead of the Constitution Party. I would like also to take a second to say hello to Mike, and speaking of Bill Mohr II, he's also in the comment section here. They're always here, always keeping the ball rolling, helping me get information out to people, and I appreciate that, you guys. I really do. To anybody else that's watching, the comment section is just as open to you as to these gentlemen here. If there's any questions that you have for me, as being a candidate running to represent you guys for the 5th District of Michigan in the U.S. Congress in 2022, or if you have any questions for Bill here on our party or our party platform, or how to join our party, if you feel like you've been a little lost or forgotten in these last years of our governance in our state and in our nation as a whole. But one of the first things that I'd like to jump right into, since I have the opportunity to have Bill here with us tonight, is to give you a little bit of insight into how we feel about our founding of our nation and our founding fathers' intent for our nation and the building blocks that they put in place to protect us from the sort of things that are affecting us every day right now, the types of overreach by our governance that's impacting us more and more and is being pushed now even harder now with this new administration and these new people elected to these seats on Capitol Hill, what they're trying to push even further for further reach into our everyday lives. Now, I usually try to bring you guys some type of footage or video or some explanation of our topics for the night, but to maybe no surprise to some, surprising to some others, I cannot find anything that doesn't have, for lack of a better term, a biased spin on the situation. And there definitely shouldn't be that. There's interpretations, but there should definitely never be any biases towards our founding, towards the beginning of our nation. It's not something to be debated in that manner. It's not something to have a positive and negative opinion on, to the matter of fact. Once again, it's one thing to debate intentions, but to sit and promote one opinion of a situation over another when it comes to the founding of our country, I just, I can't see that as a good thing. Just for the simple fact that we all enjoy our freedoms that we still do have every day. Even if you don't like our nation, you're still able to go out into the streets and say it to the top of your lungs that you disagree with something in our nation. And the building blocks, the foundation of our country, protects your right to say that. Protects your right to not be stoned to death or to be crucified, not in a literal sense, but to be able to do those things even if they're grievances that you're airing to our government, which are always accepted, always encouraged on my end. I always tell you all to question everything, but people also need to realize when they sit and when they say our nation is so bad and say our nation was founded on racism, and the thinking that the pure thinking that one man was purely less than another. I can never agree with that, because if that would have been the case since our founding, it would have never been put into the way in our Constitution the way it was. Our Declaration of Independence would have never been put into place the way it was if these things were intended to be debated. We were given our rights and our freedoms and our liberties by our Creator, and they were enhanced and they were backed by our founding fathers and set in stone in these documents. So I can never understand, especially the claim of our country being founded upon racism. I've never been able to see where anybody can form that opinion at. I can see problems that we've had along the way, like any other country or any other nation before us. I can see where we've had problems along the way with hammering out our structure completely, such as the Civil Rights Act in 1964, or even Prohibition in the 1920s. There's been things along the way from a moral standard that have been hammered out and have been corrected. But there are other things, like our protection of our freedom of speech and the protection to bear the arms that we choose to protect ours and our livelihoods. These things are the things that become non-negotiable. They've been spoken on in other episodes before, that especially our freedom of speech, that once that goes away, that there'll be nothing that future generations can do about it. It's not necessarily what may be going on right in this moment, but 200 years ago, that's quite a long time ago from right now. Maybe not in civilization standard, but 200 years ago to now, and these things still remain true. And I don't see where they would waver or vary in any amount of significance in another 200 years. So when people sit, and especially they debate, and people are arrested and jailed for speaking out and speaking freely, it makes me beyond discouraged of where our country could be heading to, that you're not even allowed to go and stand in the center of your town, so to speak, anymore, and say what you're angry about, or to say what you're mad about, or to say what you disagree with. And once we're being silenced, nothing else matters. Even when it comes to our Second Amendment, or the Third, or Fourth, once you take away the right of the First Amendment, you have nothing to stand upon to voice your opinion, to defend any of the others. And we see a major attack on that right now, especially with these big corporations and everything moving to online these days. Last week, my stream, when I started speaking about censorship, was interrupted. It continued on my Streamlabs, but it was gone from Facebook. and I had to restart it. And I've never had that happen. I've never seen that happen in any of the other pages or promotions that I've handled. I've never seen that happen. I've also never seen it happen that you can't find somebody's YouTube page just by simply searching it. These are the things that endanger us. These are the things that people have to wake up and they have to realize that they're going away. It used to be slowly, and now it's moving faster and faster. And we're about to hit this wall that we won't be able to return from. Not without some major happening. Right now, we still have the opportunity to stand and speak up and be heard about these things. Prime example of why I come to you guys every Sunday. So this even right here can be somewhere to where you can say what you think is wrong in our country or what you think is wrong in our state, and in some way or another have your voices heard. These reach over 2,000 people now, and there can be general consensus, and we can make this right. We can turn around from this. We can go back to what our founding fathers originally intended, with our rights and our freedoms and our liberties and our separation of powers the way that they're supposed to be, and stop this overreach of government that's coming into our lives more and more all the time, especially, like I said, with this new administration. It seems to be just put on fast forward to now. The other day, well, it would have been a couple weeks ago, I believe now, to now we are going to start chasing what is being termed as ghost guns, which violates our privacy, because anytime that these statements are made that they're going to chase a shadow entity or in this situation, a ghost entity, when they're going to give you more safety, you better be willing to give up some of your security, because that's exactly what it means. They have to have a way to chase these things, and if they can't trace them by serial number because they're ghost guns, they can't trace them by registration. The only way they're going to be able to try to track these things is through the people that they believe are doing them in the first place, which means monitoring things of theirs, invading people's privacy, a little bit more and a little bit more at a time. And it comes back to, how much are we going to take as acceptable? How much reach are we going to say, yep, that's fair to ask. Yep, that's fair to ask. Oh, you want us on a registry? Yep, that's fair to ask. Full background checks? Yep, that's fair to ask. You know, and like I said, we have to draw that line of, when do we stop this nonsense? When do we stop giving and giving and giving to our government and failing to remember that our government is supposed to answer to us? Those first three words are "we the people" for a reason. It's not we the government. It's not me the president. It's not we the Congress. It is we the people. And it was set up that way to prevent situations like we're facing right now, with just absolute tyranny and censorship and disarmament. These are the exact things that our founding fathers intended for us to be protected against. And like I said, we're going to end up hitting that wall. And when we do, it's going to be a lot harder to turn back from this. And nowadays, it just seems like it's harder and harder for people to be able to have a voice anymore. And we have to stop it, because we're the only ones that can. I tell you guys this all the time. We're the only ones that can do anything about this, and it doesn't take violence. We never want to go to that level. There may be a time in our future That may be absolutely necessary, but I can tell you that right now is not exactly that time. This is the time for organization. It is the time for our voices to be heard. It is the time for our government to start being held accountable for what they do to us and how they affect our lives every day. But somebody that Bill might be able to give a little bit of his wisdom on this subject for you guys as well.
Well, Ethan, I believe we can still turn this nation around through elections, but folks have to wake up and understand who they are electing, who they are voting for. And, I chair the U.S. Taxpayers Party, but I'm not saying vote straight ticket U.S. Taxpayers Party because you need to be aware of the people you're voting for. Now, I make every effort possible to make sure that our candidates are capable of governing correctly. And that's not my job alone. There's other people working on that with me side by side, but we produce the best candidates as far as we know and as far as our judgment allows. Candidates who are capable, candidates who are constitutionally minded, candidates who understand our nation and our states and the structure and the way things are supposed to be working. They understand, as you stated, the overreach of the federal government and state governments for that matter. But people need to research their candidates. They need to understand who they're voting for. And I believe it was James Garfield, President Garfield, and he was shot for such comments as this. And I don't have it right in front of me, but he said that voting for anyone against our conscience for party's sake is just a great evil, and that was a bad paraphrase, but that's what he was saying, that uh, it's destructive to vote party. And I understand. I mean, I know good people, and some people aren't going to believe this, but I know good people who are Republicans. I know good people who vote Democrat, and I understand why they do that. A Republican will never vote for a Democrat, so they have to hold their nose to vote for. Let's go back to Bush. Or better yet, McCain. Let's go back to the 2008 election. That was the real eye opener for me. We had Obama versus McCain, and Republicans had to hold their nose to vote for John McCain. And the reason for that was because, God forbid, we should have a guy like Obama in office, right? And Democrats, for the most part, had to hold their nose to vote for Obama because, God forbid, we should have a nutcase like McCain in office. But there was another option, and that option was Chuck Baldwin, the Constitution Party candidate. Chuck Baldwin stood at his acceptance speech at our nominating convention, and he hammered the pulpit. I can still see him and hear him today. He said, the day Chuck Baldwin walks into the White House is the day the New World Order will cease. And he meant it, and he understood what's happening in America. Well, could he have run as a Republican? He could have. Would he have gotten anywhere in the Republican Party? Absolutely not, because the Republicans would have shunned him and done everything they could do to get rid of Chuck Baldwin. So he ran with the Constitution Party, still undoubtedly the best candidate, the best option for President of the United States. But people voted Republican and people voted Democrat rather than vote for the right candidate. All right. Now, if all of those, both Republicans and Democrats, who voted against the other president instead of voting for their president presidential nominee, because they believed in him. If all of those folks would have voted for Chuck Baldwin, whether or not he would have won the White House, I can't tell. I can't say. But one thing is for sure, that if everyone voted their conscience, it would have changed politics in America forever. And things would have been a whole lot different today than what they are, because simply people voted for the right candidate. It's an amazing thing to me to watch. I mean, okay, so the common excuse is this: I didn't vote for the right candidate because I didn't think he could get enough votes. Right? I've heard that. I can't tell you how many times. I didn't vote for your candidate because I didn't think he could get enough votes. So, all right, on that great and last day, when we all stand before God and account for our actions, and I mean, it probably won't happen this way, but just for a visual, God asks you, how come you didn't vote for the right candidate for President of the United States in 2008? And what are you going to say? I didn't vote for the right candidate, the candidate that you had in place, because I didn't think he could get enough votes. Does that make sense? I didn't vote for him because I didn't think he could get enough votes. And that's really what people are saying. And it is destructive. It is hyper destructive to our nation to vote party lines or to vote for the lesser of two evils, because, God forbid, we should have that guy in office. That is destroying America. That is why we work so hard in the U.S. Taxpayers Party and the Constitution Party to promote good candidates. And we nominate our candidates through convention, right? Which gives us an advantage as far as choosing good candidates. The Republicans and Democrats use the primaries, and they take basically what they get. I mean, they do an awful lot of manipulation and backdoor deals and all this stuff to promote who they want to, but it's the people who decide of those candidates presented which ones they want to run for president. Let me throw one more thing in there. What very, very few people know is that the law requires the Secretary of State in Michigan, now I'm talking about, and there are numerous, not every, but almost all the states have laws close to this. The law requires the Secretary of State to take those presidential candidates who the news media, get this, who the news media reports are the most likely candidates, according to the polls done by the news media. So, folks, it is not the most popular candidate that wins the president, because the media sends out flawed polls to start with in their questioning, and then they respond to those polls, or they report those polls rather, according to the questions they have asked. And third-party candidates aren't even on those polls as a rule. The media asks which Republicans and which Democrats do you believe should be president, and again, they don't ask the question exactly like that, but that's what they lead to. And then they report the results of those polls, and then the state governments take those polls and place those people on the ballot for the primary. That's a little bit oversimplified, but not very much. It is the news media that determines who shows up on the primary ballots.
Yeah, and it's just another gear in this huge system of keeping, quote unquote, regular people, everyday citizens, hardworking folks, from being able to run for seats like this. Like, even me, I can tell you that the hoops and the hurdles that you have to go through and go over to try to start something like this or try to do something like this, just to even try to represent your fellow man, is one of the most time consuming, if not the most time consuming and agonizing processes that I've ever been through. They want to know every single thing about you. They will look into every single thing about you. They want your bank history. They want your tax information. They want pretty much everything you got to try to stop you from doing this in the first place. And then another thing that I get asked constantly about is the money aspect. Okay, this person, how are you going to compete with this? This person spent $20,000 on this, that, and the other. And the only answer I can ever find with that is, and I mean, the lesser side of that for me is the money apportionment. How you spend it and how well you spend it and where it's focused on. But the more important key of that subject is, does the money matter more than what you're saying? And when it comes to the political spectrum, on a usual constant basis, it does. But as we've seen in recent years, people are tired of that. People are tired of the same old back and forth. Let's do it this way one year. Let's do it this way the next year. Like Bill was saying, the Democrat and Republican back and forth. And especially nowadays, when we have the internet at our fingertips, and we can choose where our sources come from. People tend not to. People read a 30-second headline and they form an opinion and they don't get into the body of the article a lot. But people need to. I really hope that, especially with, no matter how skewed they may be, especially with the polls that have came out of, for example, if people had known about stories that were being suppressed by the media, like Bill was saying, they were being suppressed by the media in favor of one candidate or the other, they went and voted for the current administration that's in place right now. And those things vary from money investments to family members with certain documents that were found and certain computers that were found. But regardless, if people would have known these things, it would have affected the way they voted. So for me anyway, that tells me two things. That tells me, one, that, like I said, people read headlines. People don't read the body of things. A lot of people, not all, but a lot of people take what's presented in front of them and they take it as the gospel of the situation. And two, on the other side of that, that people aren't utilizing the tools, especially that we have nowadays, to research their candidates. And I've reached out to Democrats, with doing my show here, trying to come to you guys. I've reached out to Democrats. I've reached out to Republicans. Bill here, as you can hear and as you've been told, is the chairman for the state committee here in our state for the U.S. Taxpayers Party. And we're trying to blur these lines. Because, like was stated, that's not what it's about. We'll use Mitch McConnell as an example. He, on the second impeachment of Donald Trump, he voted to not impeach, and then stepped to the microphone and still stated that he believed in some way Donald Trump was responsible for the events on January 6th. Now, that right there, if that doesn't prove everything in one pot, that you can stand there and stand with your whole party because that's what you want to do, and you're voting with the majority, that you can stand there and vote one way. These are the representatives that we have. These are the people that we have in place to share our voices, whether they be right or wrong about their situation at the moment. That you can stand there and vote one way and then turn around in 30 seconds and state that you feel a completely different way. Okay, so why aren't you voting that way? If that's the way you feel at your heart about the situation, why aren't you voting that way? If you feel that especially your constituents, aren't being represented in full light, why aren't you standing up and saying something? And this goes, all the way across the whole political spectrum. Mitt Romney, because I've had comments recently that I tend to lean right a lot, which I do. I am a conservative. But I like to emphasize that I always try to give everybody a fair shot. With my daily postings, I try to use multiple sources. I try to do my research, no matter who be right on the situation. And that's why I'm selecting Republicans tonight to pick things that I've disagreed with that they've done. Mitt Romney recently spoke at a major Republican event in his state and was almost censured by his events with the voting of the both impeachments of Donald Trump. And these people in their own right and in their party's own right are starting to be held accountable. Now, is it for the right or wrong reason? That can always be debated. But the important thing is up until now, I haven't seen this many censored attempts in my life. I'm almost 30 years old, and I know a lot about American history. And like I said, in my lifetime, compared to the last 2-3 years here, I have not seen this many censored attempts. And to me, it speaks volumes that no matter what we might see on the media every day, no matter what might be pushed upon us, that the good people are winning our country back. That these people are being held accountable, and people are looking for other avenues to try to have better representation. And that's a big part of what I want to try to do for people. Is like this past week, I worked almost coming up on 60 hours in the last 2 weeks at my job. I want to know how people like me feel on a day-to-day basis, and that's what I want to take and head to the top of our state and to our U.S. Capitol for all of you, because it's time that, especially the middle class people like us, it's time we have our rights back. It's time we have our freedoms back. It's time we have our voices back. Because yes.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners are aware, but we've got a new poll out by Gallup poll. You were talking about the right side is winning here, and there's a recent poll, I'm talking a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago, by Gallup polls that shows that 62% of Americans now want a third party. So the quest for people is certainly here. People are beginning to wake up. They're beginning to look around and saying that what we've got is not working. We need to do something different. And 62% are saying we need a new party. So that party is already on a ballot. All you need to do is vote for us.
Exactly, and another thing I'd like to add to that is in my research, I tend to watch Google Trends quite a bit, and the search for our party, especially since the November election of this past year, it has rose 700%. And all these things point back to the same fact that the people are tired. And we've watched other civilizations throughout history that have tried governments like this and have been ruled over by a rich and powerful government. And we have seen them collapse time after time after time. And we don't want to see that for our nation. We want to see our nation succeed. We want to see our nation thrive. We want to see our people thrive. We want to see people just be able to live their lives and prosper. And another thing, when it comes down to the politics being splayed out into our society, that's why there's supposed to be people that are elected to represent you and truly represent you, so that you don't have to fight for your voice on a constant basis and feel like you're not heard on a constant basis. I believe that's part of the problem of why we have so many societal problems, is because these things that aren't being atoned for, that aren't being handled the proper way by our representatives, are being pushed out and splayed out into society. And that's where you have neighbors hating neighbors because they have an opinion about a situation, or because of who they voted for in the last election, or whatever the scenario may be when it comes to politics and what's happening in our society. These people are not doing their jobs. And the job they are doing is not helping us in any manner. They're not standing up enough. They're not letting us be heard enough. It's like, for the most part, we don't even exist. They sit up there and they, like we were saying earlier, everything's by party. Everything's these little social clubs to where you get with this group, and there's some exclusions to that. A good chunk of our conservatives on Capitol Hill right now, a handful that I can think of, are fighting for the right reasons now. We've seen that with this past election, that we've actually gotten some solid people in there that actually care about the American people and what we want and how to get our nation back on track. But for so long, I think people have gotten used to the staleness and the stalemate on Capitol Hill. I think people have gotten used to it and have just conceded to the fact that we can never change this. But I hope, especially people like Madison Cawthorn in North Carolina, I really hope that especially people like him can let people realize that this overbearing system that we've had for so long can be broken down. If you give the little guy, or who may be deemed as the little guy, a chance for his voice to be heard, and if you don't vote by party, if you actually look into who wants to represent you and why they want to represent you, it doesn't take that much. It really doesn't. Within a few searches, or within a few things of wanting to figure out what you want to figure out, you're going to see what that person stands for. You're going to see if that's the right candidate for you. You're going to know, and you're going to be able to make your own decision based on that judgment. And that's what more people have to start doing. They have to stop believing everything that they see and everything that they read, and they have to start doing their own research, like we've said. They have to know who is truly going to be there for them at the end of the day, who is going to represent their ideals, their views, their morals, their standing. If you believe everything that's put in front of you, you're going to lose every time. Because these politicians will tell you one side of the story the one day, and then when they're in front of a different crowd of people or a different set of press, they're going to turn it around and they're going to say something else. Because they always think that everybody's always watching one set. And a lot of people do. A lot of people only watch one news segment or read one article. But if you go out there and you look at both sides of the spectrum with whoever you're going to vote for, whether it be your city councilman or whether it be your state representative or your district representative or president of the United States, it does not matter. You should always know if the person that you are marking on that ticket represents you and how you feel and what you stand for. Because if you don't, people want to talk about wasting votes. If you want to talk about wasting votes, you think that somebody like me, because I've been told that I'm a waste of votes, you think that somebody like the gentleman that Bill was speaking about earlier, you think that he was a waste of votes? No, what wastes your vote is not putting it where it properly goes. Not putting it with who you feel truly best represents what you want out of our state and out of our country. That's where the wasted votes go. Because the less those people stand up and the less those voices are heard, the more we're going to have the broken system in place. The only way to fix this broken system is to put people in there that have a true sense of responsibility to them, that truly want to do the jobs that they are doing for the citizens they're representing. These are the people we have to find. These are the people that we have to vote for. Because if we keep voting for money and we keep voting for profits and we keep voting for investments, the American people get left behind every time in that situation. We get left in the dust. That's when we get forgotten. When big money is the major influence in how our votes go and how our representatives choose to vote. That's when we lose. We don't lose by standing up. We don't lose by having our voices heard. We don't lose by knowing who we are voting for. You can't just, that would be like you go to a car dealership and you tell the guy, I want, now granted voting is way more important than this situation, but you go to a car dealership and you want to buy a new car. And so the guy's like, okay, well, which one would you like to buy? And you just walk out onto the parking lot and you don't get in it. You don't go up to it. You don't ask for the specs. You don't know how much gas mileage it gets. You don't know if it fits the needs of your family. You just point and you say, I want that one because I seen that one online and it said it goes really fast and it's got lots of room. It's pretty much the same thing. And you would never do that. You would go, you would get in the car, you would ask about the specs, you would test drive it, you would see if it suits your family's needs and what your family needs on a regular daily basis. You would investigate all these things. That's a new car. We're talking about the governance of our nation. And people don't want to go beyond a headline. That's not how this situation should ever be treated. And I really hope by our governance that's in place right now in a lot of states and at our national level, I'm really hoping that this is occurring in people's minds. And the 700% and the 62% that Bill referenced with people wanting a third party reflects that, I believe. And like Bill also stated, we're not new. We've been here. And we've, in this party, that's part of the reason why I decided to join this party specifically, is because this party has never wavered in its platform. It has never accepted policies or bills or laws that weren't up to snuff and what was best for America. There's, to my knowledge and my research, there's been never any wishy-washy with the U.S. Taxpayers Party and the Constitution Party in our country. And that's what we need. And it may not be the party for you, that's fine. But some of our candidates might be the candidates for you. Depending on the situation in America, whether it be voting rights or whether it might be government spending, everybody's got different views of different situations. And that's why we're trying to blur these lines and inform people to whether who it be for, to vote for who best represents them and their needs, and not to just go with all the hype. Know who you're voting for, because these are the things that's going to help us fix this country. And I use the term fix very loosely because a lot of people have different opinions. But as to the building blocks of our nation, what we originally were speaking about, we need something to happen to where at least the foundation of our country is still being upheld. We can argue the politics of the situation later. We can always do that. There's always time for that. But when it comes to our rights and our freedoms and our liberties, there's never any give on those situations. You should not be trying to touch those. Period. And I think it's being made very clear that we're done with your reaching. We're done with you prying into our lives more and more. Call it socialism, call it communism, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do, we're not having it. We've had enough of the situation. And our votes are starting to reflect that. So if you don't want to represent your people, if you want to sit there for the money, if you want to sit there for your investments, just know that people are going to know what you're actually there for. People are going to start watching you. People are going to start putting a close eye on you. Because people are waking up more and more, as we can see by these numbers, that we are tired of the government just reaching more and more. I found an article earlier that they were talking about all these things. I believe I posted it to my page. They were talking about more government involvement being a good thing. And it was just being hyped up by this quote-unquote expert that they had on the show. And the economy's bouncing back, and it's proving that more government involvement is a good thing. And I'm like, and this is prime example of what we get fed every day. People have got to wake up. People have got to start doing their research into all of these situations. You don't have to make your life all about it, but just know what's going to affect you and your family. Because at the end of the day, yes, we care about our fellow Americans, but each of us has the responsibility to do what's right by ourselves and by our loved ones. And that's how we propel ourselves into the future. Because it may not be today, but it could be in 20 years, it could be in 50 years, that we're facing a real problem. If we don't do something about it now, then all these things that were intended for us when our country was founded are going to be lost. They're heading that direction right now.
Hey, Ethan, I was just reading in the Declaration of Independence. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, which disputes this idea that racism was at the beginning of our nation. That they be endowed with their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The reason why we are in the condition we are in currently is because we consent to it. in a whole host of different ways. Some of their votes, uh, various different ways, we are consenting to what's going on. And it's time the people stand up and say, we consent no more. We're going to change the way we do things in America. We're going to bring it back to its enumerated constitution. We're going to make sure that men are free once again and allowed to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Uh, as soon as people are willing to stand up at all costs and do that, then we can get it changed. But people are going to have to do it.
Yeah, and I don't understand, I've spoke about January 6th before. Um, that's what happens when people are fed up. Not saying that anything may be right or wrong. I won't take a stance on the situation itself, but I will say this, that's what happens when you have a people that are fed up. That's what happens when you have a people that feel like they have been either betrayed or forgotten. And to blame it on anything else is just absolute ludicrous. Because that's exactly what it is. Is right or wrong. Once again, I won't centralize a stance on the situation. But that is what is to be expected. And I will say this also, like I spoke about civilizations in the past, that's not the direction that we want, essentially. Yes, it may have been a version of what our founding fathers had done over 200 years ago, but that's not the ideal goal. In reality, it's like Bill was saying, we have to be held accountable for our part in this as well. Now, people that either aren't able to vote on these situations yet, or like my nephews, are just coming into being able to have a voice in these situations. Them not so much, but I try to make sure, especially with them, that they're taught the right way about our country. That we are the only ones who can stop this. We are held accountable. I will sadly say that the first time I ever voted for president, that I voted for Barack Obama. And that's something that I regret quite often, not for any other reason, but the policies that he ended up implementing. And why did I vote that way? Because I voted that way for all the wrong reasons. I thought I was being revolutionary. I thought that I was helping the people of America. I thought it was time for change, as was being stated. And it was one of those times where I had blinders on for a second, and I chose to not look further than what I wanted to believe, and that was wrong. But that's what we see all the time, is people read as far as their mind has made a decision or their mind has made an agenda, and they look no further. We have to stop that. We have, if we don't know the truth to the situations at hand, if we don't have at least a little bit of knowledge, and knowledge is the most powerful thing we can have. If we don't have at least a little bit of knowledge of these situations, then we'll never be able to hold these people accountable to these situations, because we'll never know if they're right or wrong. That's the importance of knowing who you're voting for and knowing who's representing you. Because at the end of the day, you can read a headline and you can say, oh yeah, I totally agree with that. But you're not seeing the other 5 that end up being the truth, that completely disprove that one article that you read. And in reality, you're not truly being represented. You have this false sense of security that you are being represented. That's why I always try to inform people as much as possible. That's why I try to answer anybody's questions that they have, um, any investigative techniques, any approaches like that to looking into candidates. And I tell people the same thing all the time. Check your sources, look how many sides of the situation there are, and come to your own conclusion. Because at the end of the day, that's all any of us can do, is do what we think is best when we have exalted our knowledge as far as we can possibly take it, or as far as we choose to take it. And that's all that's ever expected of us. Our founding fathers put all this in place for us, and the only thing that's ever expected of us to have that informed consent to be governed. Not to just make a decision or to vote by party, but to have that informed consent to be governed. It's up to you. You put these people in power. You can remove that power from them. Nobody else, they can be censured, they can be impeached, but the direct way of removing them from those seats of representation and those seats of leadership is your vote. You have to give them consent to sit in those seats, or to be your voice, or to be your representation. Nobody can take that from them besides you. And we have to start holding these people accountable. We have to. If we don't start holding these people to the actual actions that they do instead of the words that come out of their mouth, we are going to lose this country. And that's just a bare, flat out way to put it. It's not that you're going to vote one way and we're going to lose the country. It's not that we're going to fall into this situation and lose the country. If we don't start having our people be informed of who is truly representing them, that's how we will lose. Once again, going back to our vote and our consent to be governed, that's how we will lose. Once we lose our voice, once we lose our freedom of speech and the rest of our rights engraved to us thereon, that's when we will lose. That's when we will lose the power to stand up to any of these situations that we currently find wrong. We have to do it. And it's up to us, you guys. I say this all the time. The only ones that can change this is us. Know who you're voting for. When these next elections come, and forevermore, I really hope, with what we have factually seen as fake news, stories that have been promoted, that have been false, I'm not saying ones that can be debated, I'm saying with all the fake news that we have seen right in front of our faces, with all the agendas that are pushed on a constant basis, I'm really hoping that in 2022 and 2024, that these are the years that we finally say loud and clear that enough is enough. I really hope so. I really hope that anybody that can hear me right now, make sure in these coming elections and forevermore, and teach your kids and your grandchildren the same way to be involved. You don't got to be your whole life, but to be involved, to be informed, to know who is actually going to represent you, so that we never lose this nation, or never come close as we are now to losing this country ever again. I don't know if you might have something you want to add to that, Bill.
Excuse me. There's a phrase that's attributed to both Ben Franklin and Albert Einstein, and I'm not sure which one spoke it first, but says the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and getting different results. And I'd like to put a little different spin on that phrase and say that if you want the results you used to get, you have to do the things you used to do. And just very briefly, and then I've got to go, but very briefly, if you look back at the beginning of this country and when our fathers chose to break away from the crown, they had a whole different environment than what, governmentally speaking, than what we do today. The government that they set up allowed for a man to own property, to build on that property without permit, to do what he wanted to do with that property. And property is more than just real estate. Property is everything you own, everything you work for. It is your stuff. They had absolute freedom to do with what they had whatever they wanted to. They earned it, they kept it, they maintained it, they took care of it, and the government had nothing to do with it. As long as they didn't harm anybody else, as long as they didn't use their, well, they didn't have cars, but as long as they didn't use their cars to run somebody over, they had a right to do with their car what they wanted to do. That in that day it was a horse, but that's not the case anymore. Our government, I'd like for somebody to name me one thing that the government does not have its fingers into in regulation of manufacturing, in regulation of OSHA, all of the regulation, all of the taxes, the constant double taxation, triple taxation, quadruple taxation. You pay taxes on your home over and over and over and over twice a year. And if you don't pay taxes on what you own, ultimately they will come and take it from you. And that's wrong. That's just morally wrong. And if you want the results you used to get, you have to do the things you used to do. So we have got to get back to a governance like our fathers established for us. Again, that is going to be done by not consenting to what we see today. And listen, we don't have to be afraid of the word conspiracy. I've been wanting to say that for an hour now. They call our opinions, or many of our opinions, conspiracy theories. And we don't have to be afraid of that word, because there are conspiracies. If there weren't conspiracies, we wouldn't have the word, right? But when it comes to the New World Order that we touched on briefly tonight, and is often talked about, now called the Global Reset, when we talk about that, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a theory at all. It's a conspiracy. It has been, Tony Blair stood up 12, 15 years ago addressing Parliament and named it the New World Order. It is reality. He addressed Parliament and said, we're almost there. We're almost ready to implement it. George Bush spoke of the New World Order. Richard Nixon spoke of the New World Order. President after president after president spoke of the New World Order. Presidents of other countries, leaders of other countries speak of the New World Order regularly. This is not a conspiracy. This is not something that got dreamed up. This is reality, and this will ultimately destroy our nation. It will completely eliminate the rights of the people, which is exactly the opposite of what our fathers gave us. And if we don't get serious about this stuff, it's going to be gone. Just clear as day. This is reality. This is not a theory. It is not guesswork. It is not something that we are using to try to scare people into voting for us or anything like that. This is reality. And if there's a Republican or if there's a Democrat that stands up and say, I will fight this New World Order, I will do everything I can to stop this, I'll vote for them.
Absolutely. If you give just a quick look at the 2030 agenda, which was completely agreed upon back in 2008 at the United Nations meeting, you can see exactly what we're talking about here. That on a worldwide level, now again, I'd like to reiterate that when you look it up officially, it is known as the 2030 agenda, which we're in 2021. This is 9 years. This is, and you will not believe some of the things that were agreed upon back then, just back not that long ago, 2008, for the when all this will be implemented, which is now being filed through the United Nations under the 2030 agenda. And it deals with everything from a socialist society right down to being completely environmentally friendly worldwide by 2030.
Yeah. And listen, years ago in 1798, there was a farmer by the name of William Manning, and he warned us in 1798 when he wrote an essay for the Boston Independent Chronicle. He said, in a free government, the few finding their schemes and views of interest borne down by the many, to gain the power they cannot constitutionally obtain, always endeavor to get it by cunning and corruption, conscious at the same time that usurpation, when once begun, the safety of the usurper consists only in grasping the whole. Now, what he was saying was those who are determined to get their way by cunning and corruption because they can't get it constitutionally have to usurp the Constitution. And they realize at some point that when they begin their usurpation and their violation of the Constitution, in order to keep their own safety, they have to get it all. And that is exactly what's happening in America and around the world today. Spoken of by world leaders, as I said, all over the world repeatedly for several years now. They are grasping the whole. They know they have to get it all, or they will lose it all. And we constitutionally minded people need to understand that we're in that battle, whether we like it or not. That battle is real, and our attitude needs to be the same. Our attitude needs to be either we get all of it back, or we will lose all of it. We have to have our Constitution back. We have to have our government back. We have to ensure good governance again. It's a battle, folks, that you didn't necessarily sign up for, but by default, you are a soldier in this battle. And if you choose to not be a soldier, I hope the rest of us can cover for you. But I'm asking you to get in the battle. And if you want to be a part of the U.S. Taxpayers Party and the Constitution Party, go to our website at ustpm.org. U.S. as in United States, T, Taxpayers Party, P of Michigan, ustpm.org, and fill out the contact form. That'll come across my desk, and I will personally get a hold of you. And let's talk about how we can get you plugged in and start making a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to wrap up here. I wanted to say on that that's immediately what happened with me. I can second that I applied, I did my application for the party online, and I believe it was a matter of 2 days, and Bill was on the phone with me directly, asking me questions, finding out how I felt about different situations going on currently in our country. And that's kind of what catapulted us to where we are today. Um, like Bill said here, the state website is ustpm.org, and anybody who may be watching outside of Michigan, you can always visit www.constitutionparty.com as well, and somebody will gladly help you out to get involved and join the party and see what kind of difference you yourself can make. But that'll be it for us tonight, everybody. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Bill, I appreciate you being here again. I appreciate you giving everybody some good words of wisdom that we can all try to live by and stand by, and know that anybody out there that feels the way that we do or is as passionate about our freedoms and our rights as we are, that you're not alone.
Thank you, Ethan, and thank you for all your hard work.
Not a problem, Bill. You've been a help for me right from the beginning, and it's kind of, you speak of the soldier thing. I wanted to be a soldier at one point, and until you said that tonight, I didn't really phrase it in my mind that way. So I guess in a way I still got to do what I originally wanted to do and be a soldier in this fight.
All right. You have a great night, Ethan. Thanks again.
Yeah, not a problem. And you all watching, once again, we appreciate it. Me and Bill here both. And stay strong, stay informed, and enjoy your evening.